Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. I'm Ray, What Ray Reads. Follow me on Instagram and follow me on TikTok as well, because why not? Come join us, hop on board. So we're back, we're sitting down and we're here to do some literary love story recommendations. So one of the community members asked me to do literary love stories in the comments, and I thought, okay, I will. I am someone who likes the occasional romance, but I am more of a literary romance type. I'm not much of a romance reader, but I do love the love story dynamics, the rom-com elements, if you will. The will they, the won't they. It really does hook me in. I am a bit basic like that.
You're basic.
So yeah, we've established I'm basic. And there are a lot of love stories within the literary fiction genre that are just as romantic or impactful as books that you might see in the romance genre. So I thought, you know what, let's compile a list. So these are books that I've enjoyed that I think you'll enjoy or fall into that genre, and a few, there may be one or two that are on my TBR. So this video's for the girlies and the people who like romance, but they find, you know, your usual romance a bit cheesy, cringe, get the ick. So you may want a more unique take on the love story. So without further ado, let's get into the list. Oh, first of all, is this not the cutest t-shirt you've ever seen? So I've tried to include not just heteronormative cis straight white people stories or romances between man and woman, and yeah, we just want it more inclusive. We can always make our reading more inclusive. So the first book is The Safekeep by Yael van der Woerden. Is it pronounced Woerden or Woerden? Because I'm pretty sure she's from the Netherlands. So this one was one that I read late last year, and I read it because it was nominated for, was it the Booker Prize? I'm sure it was the Booker Prize, and it's been nominated for the Women's Prize in Fiction. Everyone thinks it's fantastic, and I think it was really good too. So this is a sapphic love story set in the Netherlands, more so in the countryside of the Netherlands, against a backdrop of post-World War II, and we follow Isabel, who's isolated in the family home that she's inherited after the death of her mother. She's got brothers, but they're off doing their own thing, and she's left to sort of keep the home essentially, and she's in this big family house alone, seeing very little of anyone other than the housekeeper. She feels a deep need to control things, probably because she feels like she's got no control over her life, and she's very sort of tightly wound, highly strung, high maintenance, if you will, and people see her as cold and unapproachable. And then one day her brother brings home his new girlfriend, informs her that she's going to be staying at the family home while he's working overseas, and Isabel really doesn't want her to, but she doesn't really have a say in the matter, and she really doesn't like this woman at first, and she's everything that Isabel isn't. She's loud, she's messy, she's more assertive, and Isabel doesn't think very highly of her, and the two are very opposite. But Isabel's veil starts to slip as she starts to befriend her brother's partner, and she allows herself to contemplate the pull of desire she's feeling and that she's secretly always felt for women. We follow her as she explores her true feelings. It's an exploration of first love, if you will, self-discovery and exploring your desires as a gay woman, but the setting's very sort of hazy, cinematic at times, and rich, and it felt like I was watching a film in my mind. It took me by surprise how much I enjoyed it, and there's a twist at the end that I really didn't see coming. Yeah, I just really enjoyed my time with this book, and I found it moving at the same time also. It said gay rights. Next is Open Water by Caleb Azuma Nelson. This is as much of a modern day romance as it is a meditation on life for two black artists living in London as they try and navigate the daily realities of life, race, microaggressions, and the beginning of a budding romance, and the walking that fine line of the harsh realities and the exciting new prospects of their relationship. And they cross paths one one day at a pub and realise that they've both lived very similar lives up until that point. They both want to be artists. They've both been privately educated thanks to scholarships, and although they've had great educations, they felt sort of out of place in those environments. And they also connect on the daily experiences of racism and the harsh realities of the world, and their love stories told in beautiful poetic prose. And this is one of those small but mighty books that'll really leave an impression and an impact on you. And I read it like a few years ago now, but I still think about it quite regularly, and I really loved how this book tackled masculinity, the pressures of as you grow up, especially if you want to move into a industry that's considered in tune with your emotions, or you have to explore a way to express yourself. And I think it handles it very sensitively and thoughtfully. Next is Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth. This is another sapphic love story set in rural Ireland in the 90s, so you've got those 90s vibes. It's set during summer break, or as we call it in the UK, school holidays. But their romance and true nature has to be hidden, one because of the time, but also because of their conservative and very traditional small town and village that they grow up in. So they're sort of discovering who they are with each other, but as they discover who they are and the true feelings, they feel the need to hide it, so their relationship's in a secret. And Lucy, our protagonist, is much more conflicted because the expectations that a family place on her and what they expect from her to get married, to marry her sort of childhood best friend and please a family essentially. She feels she can't go against it and be with who she truly wants to. So she ultimately ends up having to lead a somewhat double life, all the more complicated by the feelings that she's having and the conflicting experiences and emotions that she's feeling because of it. As the story goes on and she is due to leave school, she has to make a decision. It comes to a head and she has to decide what path she'll go down, a more traditional, acceptable path that isn't true to who she is, or will she honour her truth and go explore that further off on her own. And this is something a lot of people, I imagine, have to contend with, and it's sad to think about. I feel like everyone will relate to this story because it's about first love and coming of age and that youthful sort of feeling that you get, and it's very intense. It's a very beautiful story that's laced with lots of summer imagery and you really feel transported reading it. Highly recommend it. Next is Writers and Lovers by Lily King. One I've recommended a few times, but it's getting recommended again. This is a story of loves and losses, creative ambition. We follow Casey, a writer who's trying to write a novel. She's struggling with the day-to-day, working to live, trying to make money, but also not letting her passion sort of slide away. She's in her 30s, which we're still young. Let's not act like that's over the hill, okay? She's dealing with the grief of her mother's death, and she's also ended her long-term relationship, and then she's dating and having new experiences, and a love triangle of sorts ensues, and the two people are like complete opposites and can give her two different experiences and commitments in a sense. One's more of a safe option and the other one's more an emotional option, if you will. And I like how it touches on the things that we have to sacrifice for success or to achieve our dreams, and the muses that we meet along the way that inspire us, especially if you're creative or you're an artist, these people that inspire you in your work. And I know it sounds weird, but this book always reminds me of a Taylor Swift song for any of the Swifties out there, especially more of the songs which have more of a narrative arc with characters. You know if you're a Swiftie. But I really love how, you know, it's a love story and the backdrop's very realistic, trying to make it struggling financial burdens and trying to follow your dreams when you don't have a safety net, but you still have that longing pull anyway. And yeah, I'll always recommend this book because I really loved it. Next is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. We follow Roy and Celeste, two newlyweds who are sort of about to set off on their American dream. Essentially, they've just got married, they're moving into the first home, and everything seems to be falling into place with what they've planned until Roy is one day accused of a terrible crime that he didn't commit, and he's sent to prison for 12 years, leaving Celeste feeling abandoned, alone, and like she's had the rug pulled out of the life that she thought that she was going to have, and she is struggling with losing the love of her life, a husband, and she leans on her best friend from childhood, Andre, and as they support each other, she starts to develop feelings for him, leading to a love triangle. And then we get Roy's perspective as he has his life taken away from him for something that he didn't do. And I know I say this a lot, but it has a very cinematic like feeling to it. It needs to be adapted. Somebody adapt it, please. And I really like how it tackles racism, the justice system in America, and how unjust it truly is, and how black men particularly are targeted, especially in regards to crimes that they're wrongly convicted of. And it's about how a moment in time can derail someone's life and the life they planned and hoped to have, and how time changes things. New dynamics can form between people who are already sort of close, and they can have a possibility of a future they never thought they could have. But it's a very moving story, and one that is as gripping as it is heartbreaking. Next is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors. This is the story of two unlikely people who are sort of thrown together one night at a party, and they're drawn to each other, and they start connecting as they both are living in New York. She's like 10 years younger than him, but she's very enamoured, and their relationship starts with an impulse. They get married, but as the high of their infatuation wears off, the reality of that they might not be suitable for each other, and the age difference starts to sort of worm its way into the relationship, leading to problems and unusual dynamics. And both characters are sort of struggling in a sense, and that's probably what they're trying to deal with in this relationship. Frank's struggling with alcoholism, and Cleo is going through mental health issues. And this book's a great character study on millennial life, and it feels very modern, but also there's something nostalgic about it, and it jumps around between different sort of colourful characters in their inner circle. And I've said it before, but Coco Mellors has a very specific gift for writing different voices that feel very authentic and not copies of each other, and each character could have their own story and book. And it's definitely an unconventional love story, and one that's very doomed from the start, if you will, but it's told in a way that you kind of are rooting for them, but you also know that they really shouldn't be together. So you'll be laughing and you'll be crying as well. Next is a book I recently finished and loved, and that was Deep Cuts by Holly Brickley. A mix between the film High Fidelity, I was about to say High Infidelity, the Taylor Swift song, and Daisy Jones and the Sixth Book, but it's much better than Daisy Jones. Sorry, that's my opinion. So friends who meet at university, and they're drawn together one evening at a bar because a song's playing, and they're both really into music, and they start discussing this like hyperfixation on music that they have, and they start spending a lot of time together. They become really close friends, but they start developing feelings for one another, but they also don't want to ruin the friendship. And as their lives sort of unfold, they leave university, they get jobs, they move to different cities. They're always in each other's lives, very similar to Marianne and Connell in Normal People. And so their relationship's platonic, but they both kind of want more, but don't want to be the one to admit it. And it's one of those frustrating but gripping stories where you just wish they'd explain to each other and get together, but also you're like, oh, maybe they're not suitable for one another. He's a musician, he's gallivanting off, but they're still always drawn back to each other after the time apart. And it's set in the early noughties, and it's got that very nostalgic feel, although like at the beginning where it's set very early noughties, I was a child, but then midway through the book we get into the 2006 to 2008 indie sleaze vibes. MySpace, that was very much me in secondary school. The vibes were there. I was feeling it. And there are some cheesy elements, but there's nothing wrong with a bit of cheese. The popcorn was out. Next, we've got Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. This is set against the backdrop of the Troubles in Belfast, and we follow a young Catholic school teacher who works part-time in the evenings at a family's pub, and one day a mysterious barrister comes in and they start talking and feel very connected to one another. This meeting sparks a blossoming romance or affair, and they become embroiled in each other's lives, and it's a secret because he's a Protestant and she's a Catholic, and where they live, especially her, wouldn't be acceptable, especially during the time, and how heightened the tensions were. And what I loved about this book is, firstly, it's Irish. She loves Irish lit, but it doesn't gloss over the heaviness of the realities at the time and how prevalent it was in their daily lives, and that's still very much central to the story, even though it is a love story as well. And I think the fact that it's real world events that happened really makes their dynamic and connection more intense in a sense, and they want to sort of hold on to what they've got, knowing that it's frowned upon or it could be pulled away from them at any moment. I devoured this book. I absolutely adored it. It was one of my favourites from last year, and I also read it right after I'd read Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe, so that gave me like a real history lesson, if you will, because I was very informed about what was really going on. I just felt like I was still immersed in that time period in the world, so I highly recommend reading that before, or if you don't want to read the book because it is a long one, the TV series, which is on Disney Plus, I think, is really good too. Next is Tom Lake by Anne Patchett, and this is very spring vibes. Set on a cherry farm during the pandemic, a woman's daughters come back to live with them during this difficult time, and they need the help on the farm, and whilst they're sort of doing the mundane daily tasks, they ask the mother to tell them the story of when she was in a relationship with a now famous actor, and the narrative jumps between past and present. Now the woman is happily married, has children who are grown, and she's reliving this period in a time when she was doing a theatre programme in a summer camp where she met this actor, and he was just a regular young lad at the time. It's her first love. It's kind of coming of age for her in that sense, and it's the highs and lows of a new budding romance. And as we drift back and forth, we learn how it shaped a life, how she was connected, and how it led her to the life she's living and she chose. This one's for the girls who want a spring summer vibe, a feel good vibe, a book that will make you feel sentimental and nostalgic even though you weren't there, and equally tug at your heartstrings as well. And this is the only book I've read of Anne Patchett's, but I really enjoyed it. So if you've read any more of her work, let me know at which you'd recommend, because I really want to read more of her books. And the final book on the list is one that's very highly recommended to me, and that is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. And I've seen like quite a few people reading this, but I've seen someone on BookTok recommending it, and as I said, I don't read much romance, but if someone I trust says it's good, I'm going to check it out. Set during summer in Brooklyn, this story's said to be an all-encompassing will they won't they type love story set over multiple decades, 15 years previous when they first had an encounter, and then a unexpected encounter at a writers' festival 15 years later. They're drawn back to each other, and I've heard people say this is a very realistic look at the tumultuousness of relationships, and relationships that have sort of gone but they've come back round again, sort of one that got away. Were they right for you then, or are they right for you now? And people that leave the mark on you and change you for good or for bad. As I've said, I like romances that have a bit more substance, and that's definitely given that. So let me know if you've read it, because this is the next one that I want to read. If you just heard something, Milo was just shaking, you know. So yeah, there's some literary romances that I've read or want to read, and I think you'll like too. Hopefully there's something there that you want to read and check out. But as I said, I'm not much of a romance reader. That's why I like literary romance, or romances that have more substance. We can read sort of literary fiction and there's really impactful romances in those stories. But if you liked this, let me know and I can create another video, a part 2 if you will. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe because it really helps me out and it supports the channel. Let me know in the comments some literary romances or romances that you've enjoyed that you think I'll like too, because I'm always looking for recommendations. As always, thanks for watching. I appreciate you all deeply. Take care and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!